Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Sara Wolkenfeld, and I'm Sefaria's Chief Learning Officer. We're here today celebrating the addition of a Russian language translation to Sefaria's website. Investing in what we at Sefaria call internationalization is a goal that's going to help us deliver on Sefaria's radical potential to be a resource for Jews all over the globe. Our mission at Sefaria is to make Torah accessible to Jews all over the world, wherever they are, and at whatever stage of their Jewish journey they're on. And part of making these texts accessible is making them intelligible to people. We want everyone to be able to chart their own path through Jewish texts, and having texts in multiple languages is crucial to that effort. And so today we're going to spend a little bit of time celebrating and exploring this new Russian language Torah translation that we've added to the set. So I'm going to invite our panelists today to join me on the screen. We're honored to be joined today by three people with a deep understanding of this translation and of how it will support the learning of Russian-speaking Jews all over the world. I'm going to ask them to share a bit with all of us about the project, and you'll all have the opportunity later on to ask your own questions. So please feel free to hold on to those or to put them into the chat when they occur to you. We'll be taking some of those later. Please add your questions in English if you're able to, so that our team can easily read them. And that way we'll get to have a little bit of back and forth about this translation. So let me tell you who's joining us today. Dr. Dmitri Slivniak is a PhD scholar specializing in biblical studies and Jewish studies. With a background in general linguistics and French literature, he has taught at universities like Tel Aviv University and Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And currently, Dr. Slivniak is translating Tanakh, translating the entirety of the Bible, from Hebrew to Russian for the Da Project. I'm also excited that we have with us Leonid Rozengauz, the project director of the Nadav Foundation, who leads the foundation's projects related to Jewish identity and Eastern European Jewish history. And finally, I want to introduce Maria Kaspina, PhD. Until 2022, she worked as a lecturer at the Center for Biblical and Jewish Studies, the Russian State University for Humanities, and deputy academic director of the Museum of Jewish History in Russia. She's been the coordinator of academic projects of Sefaria Center for University Teaching of Jewish Civilization. She teaches courses on rabbinic literature, biblical literature, Jewish folklore, and traditional culture of East European Jews. In March of 2022, she moved to Israel and now lives there, and she collects interviews with Holocaust survivors for Yad Vashem and works for the Project Da. Maria, can you start us off, please, by telling us a little bit about the history of Russian translations for those who are Russian-speaking, for those especially who aren't, and tell us a little bit about the history of these translations of the Torah in particular and Jewish texts more generally.
Okay, thank you. I really teach biblical studies for several decades in Russian State University, and I know how it's useful and how needed is the good new Russian translation of the Jewish religious texts, both Torah, both Nevi'im and Ktuvim, and the whole Jewish Bible, Hebrew Bible, as it is. We have one very important translation, which is called synodal translation of the middle of 19th century. It was very interesting and very best investment into the Russian biblical scholarship of the 19th century. It was translated sometimes from Hebrew, and such Hebraism like Wolson and others used to be part of this translation. But it's still, in our days, it's very, very old one. It seems strange to the Russian ears. It seems strange to the people who want to understand and not just to know what he's reading a Bible. And the understanding point is not the most important one. if you hear, for example, Russian translation of the Bible, for example, in the Orthodox Church, you don't supposed to understand what is saying. And even there is a folklore tradition that the people who read the Bible as a whole, since the beginning till the end, he is like a mad person. He will begin something strange and he will not understand nothing. And that's it. So it was the preposition that if you don't understand the sacral text, it's okay. It's the sacral text. It's for you don't have to understand it. And the new translations that appears in the 20th century, both Christian and secular and Jewish ones, they are trying to present the understandable level of language, that it's written in the language which you could understand, and that it's not something sacral. Although yes, but you can you are able to read it, to interpret it, to understand it, and to say something that it's important for you and why it's important for you. So the translations that appears in the 20th century, in 21st century, they are very much against this synodal translation. They try to avoid the formulas, the common knowledges, the phrases which we know by heart from a lot of sources. And they are really, they try to be academic. They try to be as much closer to the original as it possible. And it's impossible to do it in the printed edition, because you have too many commentaries, too many translations, too many interpretations. And to my mind, the online project which we have now, the Sefaria project as a whole, and the Russian translation as a part of it, is a huge opportunity to show this both understandable text and the possibility to read the interpretations, to know the variations of commentaries, which is huge, as we know. So to my mind, this is the big step forward to the meaning of this text, to the possibility of, for example, students who learn Jewish studies. They have to know Tanakh as a source, but they don't know Hebrew. They start to learn Tanakh in the first or second grade. So they have to have an instrument, and this is an excellent instrument for them. So that's what I would like to say.
Thank you so much. That was really helpful, and I really appreciate the way you framed it in terms of the ecosystem of Sefaria. Also, that was really helpful to me in understanding the impact. Dmitri, could you tell us a little bit about the goals of this particular translation and what your process was like as you did the translation?
Well, in translation theory and practice in literary translation, there are two basic approaches: the source-oriented approach and the target-oriented oriented approach. The source-oriented approach tries to reproduce all the finest shadings of the translated text, although it may sound a bit weird to the reader, as to target-oriented approach. It tries to make the text smooth and smooth and clear as far as it is possible, but may sacrifice some shadings. My translation is tightly connected to the commentary I write. So when the translation doesn't reproduce some shadings, uh, I can I can supplement this with a commentary. Yes, and I combine the target-oriented approach and the source-oriented approach. And I always, in my commentary, I always try to give other possible translations. And the main thing is to bring the text and the milieu that created it closer to contemporary readers.
Thank you. So that's similar to what you were saying, Maria, about just making sure that it doesn't sound archaic to modern ears. And
You know something. Now I'm translating the Psalms, and I feel that the translation of the Psalms should be archaic.
Yeah, because it's poetry. Is that why?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. But for the 5 books, you didn't do it that way. You did it in a more readable way for people.
Of course, not only for the 5 books, also for such books as Ruth and Esther and Kohelet. I try to use contemporary language as much as I can.
And do you have other people working with you on this project, or are you really sitting and translating verse by verse?
I'm sitting in translating verse by verse. What sources I'm using? I'm using modern commentaries as much as I can find them. Sometimes medieval commentaries and Talmudic commentaries, as far as they are actual to us. And I would like to recommend an excellent source, which is the Blue Letter Bible, created by Protestants, and it contains lots of English translations, and not only English, and also it contains one of the classical dictionaries of the biblical Hebrew, the Gesenius dictionary.
So you're really working with sources in multiple languages. You're working with
Yes,
Hebrew and the English and the Russian, all to make a readable Russian translation.
Yes.
And is Psalms what you're working on right now?
Psalms.
Yes. That's the next book that you're working on.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Leonid, can I ask you to speak a little bit to how this project came to be something that the Nadav Foundation was working on and how you view its importance?
It's a question to me.
It's a question to Leonid, but you can also answer.
Well, let's give it to Leonid.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think that your glance, Dmitri, is important too, because you started it earlier than me. I started work for Nadav Foundation when the project of translation of Tanakh was already started. And I totally understand like why Foundation started it and what does it mean for our mission that we see, like what we face with. And as you, Sara, said, I work for foundations with projects related to Jewish identity. And from my perspective, one of like crucial and basic aspects of Jewish identity is relationship to Tanakh. Like, we don't have assumptions that every Jew reads Tanakh with attention or treats it as a holy text. We know that our relationship with religion more complex and more deeper, but we want to build a bridge to show one more way to explore Jewish text, one more way to find how we can make it ours, how we can make it more readable and understandable, less boring, and how we can find points when Jewish classic text answers to more than actual problems. We face with a lot of problems that we need like answers from something really with wisdom. So I think that this is the reason why Foundation started this project, and till now we continue working with Dmitri on translation, and we are very proud of it because we think that it's like great work, excellent translation, and not only translation but also commentaries that Dmitri make to and add into his text. And I think that I hope that this translation will speak to readers in a way that they can understand it and they can connect to this in their native language. That's very, very important now. Yeah. So briefly, that's it.
Dmitri, did you want to add to that?
What did I want to add? I even don't know.
Okay. Maria, do you want to add anything in terms of this translation and sort of where you see it going beyond what you said in light of this mission that Leonid laid out?
I would like to say that we have not only the text but also audio in our Sefaria page, and it's what makes it special, because if you couldn't see, read good, or just you want to hear or listen the text, it's very, very interesting tool for you, which we have not a lot in many other opportunities. So it's what makes this translation special, I suppose. So. And it mixed, like all the text in Russian, we have to be aware of Hebrew nomenclature and Jewish nomenclature. So is it Parashat Shavuot, or is it the book of Genesis? Is it the page chapter 1, or is it Parashat Vayishalach, and so on. So it's what make useful and easable to go from one nomenclature to another. So that's it.
Great, thank you. One more question to ask you, Leonid. When we were in touch before this event, one of the things that you wrote, you said that bringing the text of the Torah to Russian-speaking Jews is urgent and essential. For too long, Soviet rule meant Jewish people had to hide their connection to their heritage. And I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit about this project in light of that history specifically. I know you talked a lot about bringing relevance and wisdom into people's lives. I think no matter what language you speak, you can appreciate that goal. But I'm wondering if you could talk about it a little bit in terms of the history of Russian-speaking Jews specifically.
I'll try. It's really complex question because, yes, because of Soviet regime, Jewish people in countries that were included in Soviet Union were limited with the Jewish studies. They didn't have enough opportunities to be Jew in like religious way, to connect with tradition and so on. On the one hand, we see this process as process of building a new identity of Eastern European Jewry. On the other hand, yes, it's essential part of our heritage, and yes, it's important to be connected to know what it is. And despite the difficult relationship with the religion now, it's important to have enough opportunities to learn what is it, because yes, a lot of Jewish things, like aspects of Jewish culture, aspects of Jewish history, built on tradition, and bring in translation that are relevant to people, that speaks in modern language, that trying to find answers to questions that they have to this text. It is a way that we can try, where we can try to connect people with the text. Another thing, that every translation, it's a commentary. Like when you write a new translation for ancient text, you comment it in the way not very natural, like you're not writing commentary, but you explaining, because another language, it's another cultural code, it's a lot of things changing. And translation, it's not only speaking in own language, but is connecting with the culture that we were raised in, and in culture that we're using through our life. And that's important too. So the more ways to connect to tradition, to text, to opportunities to learn about it, better.
Wonderful. That's certainly a core belief for us at Sefaria, and it's really interesting for me to hear you kind of frame that in terms of the history of Russian-speaking Jews in particular. So thank you all so much. In a minute, I'm going to open this up for a larger conversation. I might have a few more questions, and I think that some of our audience members have questions also. I just want to tell everyone here about a project that's ongoing at Sefaria right now. One of our most ambitious projects is the Global Community Torah, which is a digital Torah scroll co-written by people from all around the world. There are over 300,000 letters in a Torah scroll. So when completed, this Torah scroll will have been written by over 300,000 Jews together. As you know, we believe that the texts in the Jewish canon belong to all of us. The Global Community Torah is a really tangible way of expressing that unity and co-ownership of our heritage. When you go to torah.sefaria.org/scroll, and that website will be in the chat. When you go to that site, you can see the thousands of letters already written, as well as a map showing where in the world people have participated from. Simply by moving the cursor around the screen, you can see the names and locations of those who have contributed to the project. I find it to be a very moving experience, and I hope you'll take a look. So here's where all of you come in. This week, we're inviting Russian-speaking Jews worldwide to add a letter to the Global Community Torah in honor of the new translations that we've added to the library. The idea is that together, the letters written this week will form an entire section of this digital community scroll, a section that's contributed by members of the Russian-speaking Jewish community from around the globe. Adding a letter is completely free, and it takes less than 5 minutes. So I hope that you'll join us in participating in this project. And I hope that what we just heard about the importance of Russian speakers and Russian-speaking Jewry and contextualizing Torah for that community will be an inspiration to you in participating. Now I'm going to open it up. I'm going to invite our panelists back and open it up to any questions from the audience. I have one or two follow-ups, but I'll give other people a chance also. And again, if you can just put your question into the chat in English, please, and I'll ask it to our panelists. I'm going to give a moment for questions to come in. So while the questions come in, I'll just ask one quick follow-up. We talked about Russian translation of the Torah specifically, and then Dmitri, you talked a little bit about translating the rest of Tanakh, the rest of the Bible. I'm curious whether there are other important Russian language translations of classical Jewish texts that you're either working on or you think should exist. Maria, maybe you want to start us off in terms of giving us a perspective of what's available and what's not.
Well, there is a project of translation of the Talmud with Adinstein Salz, and it was an attempt to make it also in Russia. There are several books, Brachot, Bava Kama, Bava Mitzia, and several others, Introduction to Talmud in Russian, in the same format as Steinsaltz Talmud have in English and in Hebrew. There existing such project in Russian. There is also a huge project of publishing Midrashim in Russian, and the publishing house Knizhniki made this. We have Midrash Bereshit Rabbah, Vaikra Rabbah, Ruth Rabbah, Shmot Rabbah, and Kohelet Rabbah now is printing. So we have a small amount of classic text now. It appears in the last decade, actually. Before this, we have just anthologies of the sayings of the wise people, and it was not enough for the studying of the classical Jewish text. But Sefaria is open, and it's very, very important source for the learning. And yes, all of my students used it very much, and I made an assignment, and they write down their essays based on this very useful tool. Before, I remember when I was a student, there was only books, and the books was very ancient, and it was complicated to find them, and they was sold for a huge amount of money in the black markets. If I want to read the Bible, I have to go to the Lenin's library to open a Vilna edition of Talmud, which was very, very heavy, and all this. And now it's possible to do online. So yes, it's a great time.
That's amazing. Also tracks with some of Sefaria's priorities in terms of getting translations, the text that you named, the Talmud and the Midrashim. That's really interesting. Zina asked if there will be a translation of commentaries for Tanakh. So Leonid, I don't know if you want to speak to that or other projects you have planned, but that's a great question.
Well, first of all, some translations of commentaries exist. So Frima Gurfinkel translated almost the whole Rashi commentary to the Pentateuch. And I think it's a good translation.
Do you know if there are any? Do any of you know if there are any other commentaries that are being translated into Russian, or that people are thinking of translating into Russian? Whether that's your project or a broader project that you guys know
of. Much earlier than now, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, Chabad did something like this, an anthology of classical commentaries.
Mm. So again, the anthology approach that Maria mentioned.
Yes.
I would like to add, if it's possible, there is a translation of Rashi commentaries on Torah. And there is also one book of Mikraot Gdalot called Bereshit with all Mikraot Gdalot in Russian. It was a project of Leonid Matzach, very important one and very good one.
Amazing. Samantha asked, what was the most challenging aspect of writing this translation? I think, Dmitri, I think this is a question for you. Can you share an example of a line or a passage that was especially hard to translate, especially difficult to translate, and why? What made it challenging?
Well, I don't. It doesn't come to my mind now, specifically. And even if I remembered something like this, to understand the difficulty, you have to understand Russian.
Feel free to give an example in Russian. I think a lot of people, I am not one of them, but I think a lot of people present do understand Russian.
Now I have a really hard time translation the Psalms. But I cannot bring some specific.
No specific passages. Got it. Right. And you mentioned that Psalms is especially hard. It's a different kind of Hebrew, and that is certainly going to be reflected in a different kind of Russian, I guess, in the translation.
Yeah. And in Psalms, there are many technical terms which nobody knows how to translate. For example, Sela, or some musical instrument called neginot.
Right. Those are just harder words, and it's hard to know how to say them in any language. Yeah, that makes sense. I want to bring in one other question, at least one more. Maybe we have time for two. Zina asked, is there a plan of educational and marketing activities to get this amazing resource in front of learners and educators? I can say on the Sefaria side that we have sent out emails. We'll continue to promote this translation, which again, we're really excited about, and both in terms of the Russian-speaking Jewish community specifically, and also in terms of what it represents. I think Maria did a good job of reflecting on this, what it represents for Jews worldwide, and the idea that these texts should exist in every language. But Leonid, I'm wondering if you can speak to it from the Foundation's perspective, if there are other things you have planned.
In fact, it's very important because many people just ignore the existence of this translation and commentary, and editors turn to such obsolete translations as Yosiphon, which is probably one of the worst Russian translations of the Bible. And it's really, it's a bit.
That one's not a good translation, you're saying.
It really hurts that you have translated this text, but you cannot use it. You need to use some older translation, which is not so good.
Leonid, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I say that this task is very challenging, really, because on our website, Live, we made a lot of efforts to make this text easy reading, to make it easy understanding, and comfortable to use, user friendly. It's all these things. They are not like educational activities, but when we started to make like a podcast from these texts, it was one of efforts to bring it to bring this translation to another level, to show that we can talk like with this text, just listen to it. Maybe you don't have time to read it carefully, but now you have an opportunity to listen while you're driving or in the plane, whatever. You can listen it. You can download it, and you can work with it. And yes, it's challenging. We're trying to reach people who are studying texts, learning texts, or making events around connected with classical texts in Russian, and we recommend them to use our translation. We explain them, we show them this translation. But yes, every time it's rather difficult. But we moving forward. We are open to any suggestions, ideas, and collaborations that we can make together. And I'm very grateful to Sefaria that we have an opportunity to add this translation to your database. I think that it is extremely important, and it will give to educators a lot of new opportunities just by the fact that our translation is in your database. So we are open to collaborations in this field, in this direction, and for any discussions about it.
Great. And I will express a similar openness. Zina also asked, will these translations, the translations of the commentaries that were mentioned, be available on Sefaria? And I don't have a firm answer to that yet, except to say that we would love to have those texts available. The amazing thing about, and Maria, you kind of mentioned this, so a great thing about online as opposed to print is we don't run out of real estate, right? We're not going to run out of space, and so we are always open to adding more text on the site when we can get the copyright opened up, when we have the funding to put the translation on the site. We will always do that, and it's an important thing for us to prioritize for all of the reasons that were mentioned here today. And so we are also very open. We're open to hearing from any of you. And this is a conversation that, from our perspective, is just at the beginning. I learned a lot today, and I hope that these are conversations that will continue among us and also among our audience to think about what are the works that we really need to put up online and share with the world, and how can we bring that about. So I want to thank you all for speaking with us today. I really, as I said, I learned a lot, and I really appreciate it. And I want to just wrap up by reminding our audience that, as always, we're grateful for the generous donors who make Sefaria's work possible. Sefaria is a nonprofit organization. We rely fully on donations for everything that we do, and that's true whether we're hosting scholar events or adding translations to our library or finding the text that will light up our community's imagination and deepen our understanding of Jewish thought throughout the ages. So if anyone is considering a donation to Sefaria, now is a great time. Until Purim, all of our donations are being matched one-to-one. You can visit donate.sefaria.org, or you can email hello@sefaria.org to learn more about how to support Sefaria. And we're grateful for all those of you who work to sustain and support our mission as we continue to add texts in all languages, in as many languages as possible, and in so doing, open up access to the Jewish canon. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Leonid. Thank you, Dmitri. Really, really enjoyed getting to hear your perspectives and getting to hear the history of this translation. Even though I don't read Russian, I am still very excited to have this text, and I will appreciate it more every time I see it now, having heard from all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.